Department.
David Green, Deschutes County BPAC in for Neil Bonskart.
And online, I see James Durofi, public member of the TAC. Susanna Jolber with City of Bend. And let's see, I think that's it. Hybrid meeting guidelines. So for those of you online, know that you raise your virtual hand to speak next. And this meeting is being recorded and will be available on the City of Bend YouTube channel. Public comment. I don't see any public this time. Meeting summary. So the next item is for TAC review and approval of the meeting summary from the December meeting. So looking for a motion.
I move approval of the December 4th, 2024 Technical Advisory Committee draft meeting summary as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, so our first item here is the annual status updates for MPO. Oh, sorry, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, so our next item, annual status updates of MPO funded projects. So with our prior surface transportation block grant funds, or today, what we have is state highway funds. So I'll give a little background, and then Janet's here from the city to give updates on city funded on projects that we funded from the city, and Paul Dean from Bend Pine Schools. So in 2020 and in 2022, we had a competitive project application process that awarded a portion of our discretionary funds to smaller transportation projects. And at that time, or in 2020, the board had asked that there be annual updates of funded projects. So I put this table together, and basically it shows all of the projects that we've awarded funding to through this process, the majority of which have been completed. We have a couple in process, and then also 3 that are upcoming. So total of $3 million in funded projects. So with that, Janet, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Are you gonna flip the slides then, or?
Yeah, just
Okay.
tell me.
Okay. Hello, everybody. So we had 7 projects that we were awarded, and 4 are complete. This is a map that shows they're kind of scattered throughout kind of the central area of town. And I'll go through a few before and after pictures for each of the done ones and talk a little bit about next steps of the to-do one projects. The Deschutes River, I'll quickly go through them. The Deschutes River Trail, where it crosses Archie Briggs Road. The project was to look at, is it feasible to do a grade separated crossing there? Spoiler alert, yes. And then upcoming projects of Franklin Wall and Bond and Oregon Wall and Bond signal redesign. Gilchrist Bridge, you also might note it as the Pirate Park or Columbia Park bridge across the Deschutes River there to Riverfront. A sidewalk that was missing right approaching the school, a Pine Ridge Elementary School on Larkwood. 8th Street sidewalk, we built some islands and connected missing sidewalks to neighborhoods. We have a Colorado Avenue corridor project, which is trying to slow down traffic and improve the crossing as you come off the Highway 97 ramps to get into that residential and business district. And then this funding was like, this shows like the benefit of the funding at the time, seems such conventional now, but was to do a pilot project for removing and restriping with buffered bike lanes, and then using the delineators. So next slide. So we're the lion's share of the funding you saw on all the projects. It completely in the program, and we've spent. Yes, I did. Oh, total, yeah, about $500,000. And the one, Archie Briggs has an asterisk for that $100,000. They did not completely spend that funding. And they're gonna be working with the MPO to figure out what happens with the remainder. Does it get allocated to a project design moving forward or go back or something else? So our engineering group will follow up on that. Next slide. So a couple before and after pictures, which I think help tell the story of what we're trying to do and why. So you can see on 9th Street, this is north of Wilson towards the high school. The single bike lane white stripe versus the buffer stripe and some narrow center turn lanes. Next slide, we'll just kind of shuffle through these. Then on 3rd Street, just north of Wilson, there was no bike lane. It was a wider center turn lane, and we had done the southern section when we repaved it a few years before, and there was no project and no upcoming paving project for this section. So we were able through this funding to remove and restripe to add the bike lane. You can see, and actually like you can't script it better with person riding on the sidewalk in the top picture. And then I didn't find her that same day with the second picture, but next slide.
Sorry, there's a
There you
little
go.
lag.
It's stuck. And then 2nd Street, here's where we also removed it's a lot of our, and then you'll see this through town, and we're gonna be looking at, there are a handful of other streets, since this seemed to work pretty well. Once we could get the contractor here to do a whole bunch of work, because it's expensive to get them here, but we have a lot of 6-foot bike lanes. And so we're able to narrow the travel lane from 12 to 11 and make it a 5-foot bike lane with a 2-foot buffer. And then that would allow us to put delineators in. And so that's what happened here on 2nd Street. Next slide. And 15th Street, we're able to add a buffer, and then we repaved this. So we also were able to add 2, I think, crossing islands as well. Next project. This is the kind of concept rendering of checking the grades and feasibility for accessible route across a future Deschutes River Trail Bridge, which will be spectacular. And next.
So it'll be a bridge, elevated.
We're still looking at like confirming that we have funding in the shorter term, but that is the intent. Yep, an elevated bridge. And then this is the short section of sidewalk from the Murphy roundabout down Larkwood to the Pine Ridge Elementary School now. Love it when this was from Google because we didn't get a picture before the winter came, and like that happens, the car drove by when kids were walking. So that tells you they're probably doing it quite a bit. So. Yeah. And then here's 8th Street. We built the pedestrian crossing islands. We're trying to change, we don't have any projects on 8th Street. So it's funding like this that helps us help change the context of those streets a little bit. And so we were able to build the 2 islands and some little sidewalk gap sections to connect people across to, what is that? Holland's Head Park on the other side there, as well as some transit. So next. So that's the ones we've completed. What's upcoming, and part of this is upcoming because Colorado Avenue was delayed for a variety of reasons I can talk about, and the other ones just were funded starting in July, so they were funded in the later periods of the grant. So it's the Deschutes River Trail at Riverfront. That project just finished their 30% their concept options in their public meeting. And so they'll be moving forward into their 30% design till they get a path on one side. And if you're not familiar, it's that section north of the park and south between Drake Park and Miller's Landing.
So we don't have what the design looks like yet?
We don't. They just determined that the selection was to put a path on one side with a one-way street as opposed to a wider street and a path.
Right, there's all sorts of utility poles and everything else along there, so.
Yep,
Yeah.
yeah, we're kind of wedging things in existing like we do in
Okay.
a lot of spots, so.
Okay, so how far out of the 345,000, how much have they spent so far?
I don't know exactly, but probably not much, just the concept was just a small percentage, like less than 30%. I
Okay.
would say, yeah, just.
Will that include removal and redoing of the existing sidewalk?
Yes,
Well, okay,
yes,
but it's completely
if
destroyed.
you could call it even
Yeah,
in many
exactly.
sections.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Some of the newer homes have redone in front of it and some of them have been there. So
pretty crapped.
Yeah, that's a nice, I think that's.
Well, and what's,
Running, it's like, okay, I gotta run over on the, because it's too.
yep, or in the
gnarly.
street, which is also not paved. So
Yeah.
part of it would be repaving the street, building a sidewalk, a narrower sidewalk. It might even be the 5 foot on the one side and then an 8 foot path on the other. side.
Okay.
So yeah, and we're still looking for funding to build the project, but this will put us in a much better position when we have, there's a lot of unknowns in the design right now. So
Cool.
very good. And then Colorado Avenue, we talked about that a little bit, and I have this asterisk there because initially, when we applied for this, it was gonna be a study because it was helping figure out what improvements were gonna happen between timber yards, and I always forget the name, which I shouldn't, of the other projects there. And those have gone through a variety of iterations, and now a piece of the Sizemore modal filter is with the development projects now, so that we don't need to study, and then the Ani project is starting, which is looking at things on the other end. So the intent of this was sort of be trying to outline what all that would look like and what would go with what project, and that sort of happened over time between our capital projects and development. So we're able to use this going back to the curb extension plan that we had that started the whole thing before the development was happening, which is extending the curbs on the west leg of Colorado. It's big, if you can picture it, it's really wide. You come off the highway and it's wide, and it narrows in there to some awkward width. And then the path from Crux comes up and doesn't very evenly or smoothly transition across the intersection. So we have to resubmit the design to ODOT because it's an ODOT intersection. So we'll work through that and hopefully we can get something built. I don't know that I want to say by next fall, but we're certainly targeting that.
Okay, pertaining to the ones that are completed, I was just wondering, what kind of public comment have you received about that? Because I know we've had some negatives on Greenwood or something.
Yeah, we have not. We've had positive feedback and even went and met back with, I have to follow up with the school on their experience on the, if it impacts their travel at all, but we've talked to a couple of the different business owners and said it's, that's the one negative side, and they're like, it's definitely workable. It's not as onerous as we thought it was gonna be, and we've heard a number of different positive comments from people walking and biking through there. And even some drivers on Second Street, because it's sort of changed the context for the people who are turning out onto the street.
Okay.
So yeah, and then downtown signals, I said it's third Franklin Wall and Bond and Oregon Wall and Bond. So those 4 signals are our oldest aging infrastructure and need to be redesigned. So we're doing that, and we are hoping to also, this is where having funding that seeded the project to get started, add some additional city funding, because if you picture Franklin down here, the bike lane ends. And we're trying to figure out, well, how would you continue it through? So we have a plan to redevelop it. And then across from the lemon tree and at the end of Brooks Alley there, we were starting to look at a project to install a median for a right turn out only, which it is, but people try and turn left, which makes it hard for people crossing and congested and the whole thing. And then there's a odd double sidewalk there with the bus stop and a new hotel going in. So there's a great opportunity to try and reconfigure that as well. So we're looking to add to that scope to be able to redo the corridor with that signal design.
So the other, the signals on Oregon, then, are they just going to be replaced essentially and upgraded, or is the intersection going to be?
You had to ask that question to put me on the spot, didn't you? So, and the reason I say that is Oregon signals probably are our worst condition signals, and we turn them off and sometimes hope they turn back on, which electric, you can at least fix that piece, but part of that is going to be what's going to happen with Hawthorne a little bit. And so there's going to be a little pre-evaluation before we get into this design to see, is the signal still the right treatment for those intersections? Or would we do something different? So there's a little more to that project, but it's a good question. And then downtown bike improvements is, I have the signal upgrade and bike improvements as part of the 1.1 million, because for whatever reason, those were combined into 2, but they're really 2 separate types of projects. So our engineering group is combining the bike improvements and the phase 4 greenways as part of their crosstown bikeway, and they're able to complete the scope when we have this funding in addition to our funding. So that's where we're at. I think the next slide might be. Thank you.
Well, you got, go back, you got
Oh, yeah.
phase 4 of the greenways. So what's phase 4?
I think that one, so there was so much going, we were just talking about so much going on right now. I believe that is part of the Hawthorne and Franklin route. So it's extending that piece to get across town. And Norton is the second piece of that too. So we have an arts grant, so it's connecting the Norton crossing on the one side and then the Hawthorne on the other side of Greenwood. So we have parallel routes working through. So hopefully that was a good example of how you can see how this, the STBG funding is a perfect funding pool to help get the city doing some different things, moving in the direction and nudging projects forward or completing scopes that we wouldn't have been able to do without the funding. So thank you very much.
Yeah, where can we find fuller descriptions of these projects? Are they on the city webpage?
Most of them are, yes, or they haven't started yet because some of these are the next up projects. So we don't have anything.
And if you're looking for locations specifically, from the original application, we mapped the locations on our equity map viewer that's on our website. So you can pull that up and click the STBG projects and those will pop up for you.
What are our next steps for the Gilchrist Bridge replacement?
That is a good question too. So Brad is working with Ian, our staff's working with the Parks District on I think they're doing a 30% design, or they were doing the park design and looking at what would a new bridge look like there. And then in the meantime, I think we're waiting till April. They should have more information on what that might look like and what wants to happen with that bridge. And we'll decide if we want to do some interim surface improvements. But work together ultimately to plan to kind of change the grade of that bridge and the width of that bridge too, ultimately. But it's competing with Drake Park Bridge that is in much more dire need of a resurfacing and kind of a widening.
And then another future project, Brian, I don't know if you want to mention that, although it hasn't started yet, but your organization got some funding for Safe Routes to School program. It'll be starting this year and be funded through the next 3 years.
Yep, so that's beginning February 1st, and we are in conversation on working out the scope of work for that. It's in collaboration with the MPO, City of Bend, and is in tandem with some of the efforts that Bend McLean School District is doing as well. So it's a big joint Safe Routes to School effort.
If I should amend on to that, we're working towards having maps for every school, and the school now has all the maps posted on the website, so they're a lot more available to folks. And then we're working on getting the rest of the schools mapped, and then continual feedback with the school district and community options in the city on what little improvements we can make to help improve the connections and the routes as they come up.
Yep, exactly.
Ryan, will that extend the Safe Routes to School out to the bus? The bus area, walking area has increased. So will that increase the area that you're trying to cover?
It depends on the school.
Mhm.
It's specific to each one of them. So yes and no, depending on which one you're talking about. Yeah. But we're trying to expand as much as we can, and also to collaborate with high schools as well as what Janet just mentioned, and really creating accessible resources so people know where they more safer or suggested routes are available. We've also got a project that we're working on together that works with seniors as well. So there's a lot in the works right now.
James, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah. Yeah, I just have a technical question. I mean, right now we've got all these projects all over the city, constantly asking for citizen input. Is there a minimum standard for what the city is considering a bike lane width with protected paint, and a bike lane width with separated entirely kind of thing? You said in one area you went from a 5 foot striping to a 4 foot striping with that little 1 foot buffer. Um, is there a citywide guideline that you guys are following for minimum widths?
There is, James, and there's two categories of that. So our engineering standards have a new cross-section standard, and most of those are 6 or 6.5 foot bike lanes and 2.5 to up to, I think, 4 foot buffers, depending on the type of street in the cross-section. And then for our retrofits, we're targeting the 6 and 2.5. But we will go down to a 5 foot bike lane with a 2 foot buffer where we can, but we're trying to keep, the standard is to keep one of those two options. Anything smaller is either not buffered or it's too small to potentially fit delineators in someday.
And just to follow up, so as these bike lanes approach, say, elevated crossings or roundabouts, are those ramps at least as wide as 6 feet or 5 feet, or I guess the cutouts, or it seems like some areas as I look around town, I'll see like a bike lane and then the ramp that bike lane goes onto a sidewalk around a roundabout seems to be narrower. Is that the case or no?
It may be the case with some of the existing ones that were a little narrower. I don't believe any of them are less than 6 feet. And they will be between 6 feet and 8 feet, depending on the bike lane width.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any more questions for Janet? No. Okay.
Thank you all.
Yes, we do.
So next, we have another project that was funded with MPO funds, and Paul Dean is here from Bend MPO Schools, and he'll be sharing his screen to talk about that. And that is the Juniper Elementary, an accessible path, safe routes to school.
Not getting the permissions to share at this point. Since not, well, other participants are sharing.
All right. So we might actually have to pull it up because it won't allow me to.
You can just, if you hit stop share, it's the,
Oh. Oh. Now try it. Thank you.
yeah, it's like a
There we go.
tiered level of allowing.
Alrighty. Can you hear me okay? All right. So this is a pathway that begins where Norton intersects 12th Street at the base of Pilot Butte, and we call it the Juniper Path because it is right next to and through the property of Juniper Elementary School. And so in about a year ago, in January of 24, ODOT did a plan, as you will see, path alternative number 1 here. So when they completed this and submitted it, we asked if we could meet with them out at the site and talk through this a little bit. A couple of the things that we were thinking about when we asked to maybe consider an alternate path was that where this path exits on Neff, so this connects Northeast 12th Street and Neff, it's closer to our bus loop, and there's also some utilities in that area. And we also had an interest in maximizing some flat buildable space. So in discussions with ODOT, they took this alternate plan number 1 and created path number 2. And you'll see, I don't know if you can see as well here, but I'm moving so this gives us maximum of some additional buildable space in flat area should we need to do that in the future. The bus lane is right around where this word only is. And so by moving the path away from there, we don't want to create conflicts between our buses and students in that area. It does have a little bit of a steeper grade, so it might be a little bit more expensive to do this path as a result. But we did feel that it had some advantages. So we had enough money to be able to do this design work, but at this point in time, we're frozen until there's additional funding to be able to consider the path. If memory serves me correct, there was about $1 million estimate of what this path would cost. So that's a quite considerable amount of money that we would need to be able to access through some additional grant and funding. And I know the city is doing some work with NEF and getting some public input on some other road improvements in that area. So I think this will be part of a larger scope when they're talking about how to make improvements along Neff Road. So while we're not tied to alternate 2, we would be still open to alternate number 1, path number 1. We do have a preference, and we've indicated that to our parties involved in this. So I'm a little bit new to this job, having started in July 1, so I'm still catching up. So hopefully I can answer any questions that you have. If not, I'm happy to write them down and get some answers and circle back to you all.
Paul, at the city open house on this project, there was a lot of concern that I just heard about the visibility at the ends of the path on Neff and how kids were going to cross that street safely to get to the path. Have you heard from the city about that? And is that changing your idea?
Would you say that the difference between alternate 1 and 2, or either one has concerns about visibility and the ability to cross Neff?
I think it's the 2 because it's closer to that curve down on Neff to the west. But I'm not real sure. And there was also some concern about the main street that kids use to walk to the school from the north side of Neff, and then how they'd have to get along Neff to either to the entrance of the path on either side.
I'm not aware of those, but I think that when we're looking at this project as a whole, we would need to be taking into those considerations and make sure that it's not just the path through the property, but the continuation of the movement of students and people through those areas to make sure that there is adequate lines of sight and crossing that makes it safe for people.
So there was, so you might check with the city engineers on that, because there was a lot of input about that at that open house.
Thank you.
And that was that Sinclair or Kev.
I
don't
I
remember
saw
who that
Ryan
was.
there, and I'm not sure who else was there.
Okay.
Any other questions for Paul? No? Okay, so if you could stop sharing and then I start sharing again. Hold on, why not see that on this? Oh,
I keep rattling that $1 million number in my head. What is the linear fee of that? It's gonna cost $1 million.
Yeah, I just got out of a meeting and we were discussing that we feel that that cost is a bit excessive and that there are ways to be able to reduce that. So, yeah, by maybe 50 to 75%. Reduce that, but I don't know much about that estimate, but that was something that was quoted to me about an hour before I came here.
I
Yeah.
will say there's a pickle that all our agencies are in together with the way ODOT and the federal funding is having to work. It's resulting in higher unit costs for everything, higher cost, and then additional contingencies in the methodology that they have to use. And so we're seeing the same on other projects. So it's hard to say if ODOT had to deliver the project, that's probably what it would cost. If we can figure out a way to keep state funding, state funded local program, the SFLP, bring that back, or through STBG or other funding, and are able for cities and agencies to use it, it gets reduced, because they're just not designed to do these small little one-off projects. So it's
yeah, and then a little more info on this project that Paul was just talking about. So previously we had STBG funding that came to us as federal dollars, but the project applicant could apply to ODOT in the past to exchange those dollars for state funds that are a lot easier to spend. But in that project's case, because that project was off of public right of way, it wasn't eligible to exchange those dollars. But now, so you had to use federal dollars to spend on that project, which drives the cost up, makes it more difficult to spend. But now we are not getting STBG dollars, we are getting directly state dollars. So in the future, for moving forward, they're much easier to spend than federal dollars. So
I think it's the steepness and the grading that needs to be done, the steps, the ADA and all of those other things that I think contribute to the higher cost. So, yeah.
So some updates on upcoming efforts with this funding program that we have. So this spring, our policy board is going to decide how to distribute our future state highway funds. So funding for 2028, 2029, and 30. We're getting now slightly less than we used to, but about 1.4 million a year. And then of course, how much to dedicate to this competitive project application process. And over the summer, we'll be revisiting the application process for changes, like do we want to make any changes to the application itself, any of the criteria that we use to rank these projects. And then in the fall, we'll begin our call for projects for these dollars. And winter, then our policy board is expected to award those funds. So, any questions on that? No. So next item we have is a review of our draft fiscal year 2026 and 2027 work program. This is a high-level overview. We're currently working on drafting the document, and we're hoping that, once we get the document drafted, which will be later this month, that the TAC could give us any comments, suggestions on our priority work items. But for this item, just a general high-level review of what we plan on doing. So to start off, some key accomplishments and work underway for last fiscal year and this current fiscal year. Our biggest one was our Metropolitan Transportation Plan update. And then also the maintenance of our Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, so our MTIP. And remember, that's a four-year program of funded projects for the Bend MPO area, mainly federal dollars. Also travel model updates. So we are looking to update our travel model to an activity-based model, which will happen for all of the smaller MPOs in Oregon. And the difference there between the travel model we have now and what we're expecting is that it's more sensitive to bike and pedestrian and transit trips than just vehicle trips. And also a key accomplishment was getting that COVID funding that we had out the door to projects. Key accomplishments and work underway continued. Any MPO assistance for ODOT planning efforts and also for statewide efforts. And a bigger one there is the household travel survey for Oregon. So that is just wrapping up. The data should be available at the end of this month, and then work on that from there would be making the data usable to put that into our travel model. And looking ahead, so a couple slides on our future year work program priorities. So I'd say probably the biggest one there is the update of the Bend Area Transportation Safety Action Plan, or TSAP. That currently we have a scope of work outline. It's with city procurement. So we're hoping to have an RFP soon and start work on that project, certainly this fiscal year, but you'll all be kept in the know on that. Let's see. Another big one is just what I had talked about, our SHF funding program. So doing the project solicitation for those 2028, 2029, and $30 for projects that you just heard about. And updating will be, there are some changes to Title VI or non-discrimination requirements for MPOs. So we'll be looking at doing an update to that plan. Any questions on this list of priorities for us in our work program? Okay. Oh, additionally, so the household travel survey, I had mentioned getting the data available to use that in our travel model. Our strategic plan, so we'd like to look out 5 years for MPO work items that we need to do, and are there any gaps in the federally required work that needs to be done, and what can we do to fill those gaps? So later we will bring that to the TAC and ask for any recommendations there, and then bring that to our policy board. Yeah.
Question. Household travel survey,
Yeah.
how's that gathering? How do they gather that information?
So it was over this last year, surveys had gone out randomly across the state, and people opted to participate. And plus this go around was that it was mainly from you download an app to your phone and it tracked you. So a lot more accurate than in the past. There was the last household travel survey was done in 2011, and that was a booklet that you got. So, yeah. So in our work program, everything is laid out by tasks. So our task 1 is really pretty administrative, project management. Task 2 is our short range planning work. Task 3, long range planning, and task 4, the modeling and data collection. So just as an example for you, I just listed a few things for each of those tasks that we do to give you an idea of what that includes. So task 1 is our TAC and policy board administration, our work program and developing our budget, our Title VI environmental justice work that I had mentioned, public participation efforts, strategic plan. Task 2 is our short range planning. So maintenance of our MTIP projects are continually being, funding is changing, or for projects within the Bend MPO area. So ODOT projects, city projects, funding's changing, phasing's changing. So maintenance of that document. We also have to do an obligation report for past fiscal years, federal funding that had been obligated within the MPO area. And then our STBG, or State Highway Fund funding management. So it's mainly to do with funding. And then long range planning, of course, that's our Metropolitan Transportation Plan that we'd recently completed. So any amendments on that if we need to, and the big item, the TSAP, the Transportation Safety Action Plan update. And finally, task 4. So this is all related to the modeling work, data collection, as I mentioned, migrating to that new modeling software program, the activity-based model, and then data collection. So our crash data with our Transportation Safety Action Plan, and then equity-related data that we map on our website. So last slide here. So our work program schedule and adoption, we're going to be meeting with our state and federal partners next month to review the draft document. We should have that ready January 20th, be providing it to the TAC for your review, and then bringing this topic to the board at their next meeting. The budget committee, because within our work program is also our budget for the next fiscal year. We'll be having that meeting in March or early April. And then we'll have public review of the document, and finally, policy board public hearing and adoption in April. Any questions on this topic? So now it's time for our member and guest roundtable. So if anyone would like to share projects or things that your agency entity is working on. For the good of it, yeah, Eric.
Yeah, so Eric Blunt here, Cascades East Transit, just providing an update on that COVID funded program. Where we were awarded $300,000 for bus shelters, plus a little over $100,000 for other bus stop improvements. We're finally getting that project off the ground. So if you're interested in following along, go to cascadeseasttransit.com/bus stops. And that's our project page describing this project and our broader effort to improve bus stop facilities in Bend and Central Oregon. There's also a feedback form where you can tell us what you think about what we're doing, request amenities in certain areas. So the way that we're approaching this is we're tackling known problem areas or known needs for improvement. So adding signage in certain areas, improving benches and spots where we know they are needed. But we're also reserving a piece of it so that we can be responsive to public feedback. So where we hear there's a need for this or something that wasn't on our radar necessarily, we can respond to that and provide shelters, benches, any kind of enhancements that the public requests within reason. But yeah, finally getting that off the ground, and we're going to be doing some public outreach and awareness in the next month here.
Cool. James, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, Eric, can you make sure you get that outreach sent out to the neighborhood districts so that they can put it on their individual newsletters? And then I have a question about the new bus, what do you call them? Shelters, I guess. I know we've had some unusual weather, but it looks like a bunch of them, I wouldn't call them, say they're flooded, but I would say they're not actually providing protection from the weather. Are you guys aware of that? It's, I mean, the last couple of days have sort of been rough on as I went past some of the newer shelters that you guys have put in place.
Yeah, so James is probably referring to Hawthorne Station. Our other big update is we're not entirely finished with renovations at Hawthorne Station, where we're remodeling the exterior to add a bus lane on our property and adding new shelters there. So these are the new style shelters that we have that are not plexiglass, but they're perforated aluminum panels. You can still see through them mostly. But there have been some comments about inferior weather protection. Wind can blow through them and the seats will get wet. So we're going to continue with some of these models, but we are exploring other shelter options that will be more robust to weather conditions. But yeah, part of our, with Hawthorne Station, we can take care of that a little better, being right there versus a remote site that is harder to maintain. But yeah, that is one of the drawbacks with this style. It's more rugged, more robust to damage, but inferior weather protection.
Thanks, Eric. I just, the primary purpose of a shelter at a bus stop is to keep you out of the elements. So if the elements aren't kept out, I question the purpose of the shelters. So I'm sure you'll work on it. Thanks.
And Eric, what's the timeline with the Hawthorne Station?
So we just opened it last week, the new platforms. So it's in use now. What we're going through now is final punch list items, so landscaping, that sort of thing. Within this month, we should be done. And I'm hoping in February, we'll have an open house. I don't know when the ribbon's gonna be cut, so we're not calling it a grand opening or anything, but we want to have some kind of event there to show off what was changed and what's new there. So we'll share with this group when that time comes.
Any other updates to share from anyone? Yeah.
Yeah, the county BPAC is going to be sponsoring a tri-county summit that we do each year for Jefferson, Crook, and Deschutes County. It'll be April 10th at the Bend Park and Rec District office, and we hope that most of you can attend.
Thanks. Anyone else want to share? Yeah.
Sure, I'll go. So we've been partnering with Cascade East Transit to do van pools in our region, which has been going quite well. And we were just awarded some funds with ODOT Transportation Options to complement that. Not supplementing the funding for the actual van pools themselves, but to increase the outreach and engagement across our community. It's a part of a larger contract that we have that's focused on TO that also incorporates walking and rolling safety, the IMP or the innovative mobility projects, a lot of transcreation, translation, working with marginalized communities. It's similar to something we've had in the past, but much broader than our scope before. If you're familiar with our Get There Oregon, Get There Rewards platform, city uses it, maybe some folks in this room do too. That includes that as well. So that just got signed in October. So that's a 3-year contract for us that changes our scope a little bit of how we function, but expands what we're doing and is really collaborative with the city contract we have and the contract we spoke about earlier as well. So it's all kind of working together. We're pretty excited about that. It's dynamic.
Great. Anyone else? Any other updates? Nope. Okay. Okay, public comment. Seeing none, so the next TAC meeting is scheduled for February 4th at 10 a.m. Do we know what room we will be in?
We're hoping to be across the street in the GMD conference room, but there is some construction going on, so if not there, we'll likely be in the Aubrey Butte room. Yeah.
Okay, which is upstairs in this building. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And with that, I'll call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Short meeting.